Welcome to Daikaiju Network podcast, GFEST 26 pre-show. We are together in the same room as we typically are for the last several years. Hopefully there isn't too much background noise. We are in my unfinished basement. So that's where we are right now. And that's why things look different. But it's the best place in the house right now. It keeps us cool and it's a little bit quieter and we're kind of out of everybody else's way in the house. So here we are, another G-Fest, hard to believe.
I know, like I was just telling Kent the other day when I was staying the night over at the hotel where G-Fest usually takes place every year, that it just literally felt like yesterday that I was there. Like everything, like basically almost everything hasn't changed much except for a couple things which are just small and minor, dealing with the key cards to the room, which are now, instead of the slide in and slide out to the hotel, like your hotel room, it's just a little you just put it over this pad and then unlocks your door. That's the only difference with it, but you get another card for your pool and the fitness room. So otherwise, not much else has changed around there. So,
well, I remember, I do this just about every year, and I remember clear as day walking into that back entryway, and I remember going up that little incline, that ramp there, right, by the seating area to the visibility bar, looking up at the TVs that were there, and I was thinking to myself, here we are again, and I remember being here. Well, I still remember that day, and that was just about a full year ago now. So,
I can still remember that. I think the second year of us being at G-Fest, and we in that corner table, and I took a picture of you just like with your hand.
The second G-Fest. Well, this is our 8th. Almost 10 years, and I tell you, time flies by. I still remember the second year we went. We were living in a different apartment, my wife and I. And I remember I was wearing my Blackhawks 2013 Stanley Cup champ shirt the day we left to go to Chicago, and you were videotaping me from behind and videotaping bits and parts along the drive to Chicago. I remember that. And this is our 8th year going.
Yeah, and that was just before I moved into my current apartment, which is also hard to believe it's been that long ago.
8 years flies. Well, let's briefly talk about kind of the last couple G-Fests. Last year, it wasn't terrible, but I think it was just one of those. It was just a G-Fest. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't. Yeah. I personally wouldn't call it. The problem is with us, though, we are at the point, though, that we've not only been to enough of these, but we've been to enough of these G-Fest consecutively that unfortunately some of the novelty wears off. And I think that's part of it for us. I think, if you went to G-Fest last year and that was your first G-Fest, I'm sure that probably is going to be like the biggest and best for you. Yeah. That's great. That's fine. But for us, I remember telling Jason like late Saturday, early Sunday last year during the convention, I said, it just kind of,
because I was sort of thinking to myself.
It came and went quickly, though. It seemed like it went by a lot more quickly than previous G-Fest.
It's like I was just kind of thinking to myself for the last couple of months before coming here that I would say I probably would at least go for maybe a few more years and just take a little break, a little hiatus from it. And I was sort of debating that after that maybe go to Japan, like go to Tokyo, and maybe if you wanted to join in on that too.
I don't know what's going on here, but
that's just a few years off. So I was thinking about maybe taking a break from it, just kind of like what you said, with the novelty and stuff, it starts to wear off.
And the funny thing is I remember we're staying for a week again this time, and we did that 2 years ago. And I remember telling you, it was maybe Thursday, Friday, or whatever it was, 2 years ago, I told you, I'm like, I'm never staying a week again because I miss my family too much. And I said, Plus, it's really expensive. And I said, I'm glad we did it. And you were saying the same thing. You're like, yeah, it's kind of expensive. And yeah, you know, 2 years later, here we are doing it again. So,
well, we sort of did this about a year ago when the reservations already began for this year's convention, because they started in August already.
Mhm.
And we sort of decided just to maybe have it as a week for the time being. And then I think a month or so ago, you were somewhat debating. So I was like, I'll give you a certain amount of time until this certain date.
In all honesty, putting me on the spot right now, even though I know I'm going to have fun, if I were to be very honest right now, 5 days is pretty good. But if I were to change things now, I would say for me, it would be 6 days instead of 7. I know it seems weird, but it's just like one extra day kind of makes a difference, especially when you have a family and unfinished projects. It makes a difference. But like we were talking about earlier, just kind of quickly going over the last couple of GFEST before we started in with GFEST 26, going through the schedule and just kind of putting our own little comments on.
And don't mind me eating some ice cream during this episode.
Big time. They don't want to hear. As long as you don't be doing that. But like 25, we were saying last year went by very quickly, really quickly. And it was an okay convention. I don't remember exactly where we placed it. I think it was maybe towards the middle-ish, lower end for me, I think.
Yeah, I think the majority of us, both of us, had it somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and then
of course 21. I mean, honestly, no.
And I remember 24 was a downer too. I think both of us said that was the second to last if we were to rank them.
Maybe 23, I would say, is the second best.
It's tough for me. Like the first two are great, and then 22 and 23 were really, all 4 of those were spectacular. But like I was telling you last year, it seems like we go to 2 and those are really great. Then we have the third one that's not so great. Then 22 and 23 were great. 24 wasn't so great. 25 kind of broke that mold where it was there. Mm-hmm. It just showed up and that was it. Yeah. I just waved and said hi, and that was that, and went out the door. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get on with the schedule. Jason has yet to see it. I've only seen it once myself.
Well, I somewhat skimmed through the schedule.
But anybody, can you pull up the YouTube page? I don't know if we have anybody watch. And by the way, if you're watching this live, use the comments. Let's have a conversation here. But anyways, if you have not watched us or even heard us in the past before we were doing the YouTube stuff, if you have not experienced us doing this, we basically just go through the schedule. We list off what's going on, and then kind of along the way we talk about some of the panels that we would like to go see. So I say let's just get started here.
Yep,
you want to get started with Thursday? Thursday's pretty short there.
Yeah, Thursday's pretty short. It mainly is all it is just a special double bill over at the Pickwick Theater over in Park Ridge, for those that want to know. And it starts at 1:00 p.m. with the movie Godzilla's Revenge.
50th anniversary of that this year, by the way.
Yep, and then at 3:00 is Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and 7:00 is X from Outer Space, and then at 9:00 is GMK, and that usually rounds out Thursday.
You know, we keep every year. What was it, 3 years ago or whatever? They had Yongari, my guilty pleasure.
Or it might have been last year or 2 years ago.
It was at least 2 years ago. It's been at least a couple of years. We keep saying one of these years we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm looking at this thing here. I mean, I would say out of the 4 movies there, what I would say maybe my big favorite out of the 4 would be Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. But even then, I'm not even sure if that's enough to get my butt into a seat there. the X from Outer Space really, and I know we have Peggy Neal as a special guest this year, so Peggy, if you are seeing this, no offense, but the movie isn't great, but at the same time, it's one of those one of those sort of stereotypical kaiju movies that I think your average non-kaiju fan thinks of, where it's so goofy, and it is, but at the same time, it's so fun. In that regard, it's like Yongari. Yongari is my guilty pleasure. I think that movie on the one hand is better. Here I go on a tirade about Yongari. I think that movie is better than people give it credit for. However, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece. No, it's far from it. It's still a bad movie. But I think it's better than people give it credit for. And but at the same time, it's one of those to where there are, I would say, some good moments, but it's so bad it's good, but it's charming as well. X from Outer Space is kind of along those lines. X from Outer Space, though, doesn't have quite the kaiju action that Yongari does. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know if we're actually gonna be doing that.
We always talk about going there, but then in the end we don't end up going.
Well, I mean, I made a comment about it. What about? Sorry if you're hearing any of that stuff. I apologize. But we tried soundproofing this room a little bit for this podcast. But take a look at that, though. Is that enough, though, to put your butt in the seat for, let's say, half a day? I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying, for me personally, for my personal taste, there's not enough there for me to.
I'd say it maybe.
Maybe? So what's going to draw you?
The only one out of the four of these probably would be Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Because I know...
Okay, but that's one movie. For half a day, there's got to be two movies here that entice you.
Oh, I probably would actually go for the first two.
I would too. I wouldn't mind X from Outer Space either, but at the same time, though... would I want to stay? Because there's a 4-hour gap. I'm assuming there's that gap because it's supper. But GMK, I mean, anybody who's listened to this podcast long enough knows I'm not a fan of that film. But a GMK, and especially for as late as it is, I mean, we're talking 9 p.m. Central Time. That's 10 p.m. Eastern. That's past my bedtime.
I bet.
But... GMK is not enough to get me, in the seat. X from Outer Space by itself, I mean, again, if you have the right crowd, yes, maybe. Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, yeah, probably. Godzilla's Revenge, so.
Yeah, the first two would definitely at least be the ones that I would go to if I decided to go.
Okay, I need to say something right now because... It's the 50th anniversary of Godzilla's Revenge. That's sort of the movie that's going to be, I don't want to say front and center because I think that's overblowing it quite a bit. But it's going to be something that's kind of at the forefront of the general convention's mind this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get something straight here. Or let's kind of...
Well, and that's essentially what this year's GFEST logo is.
Right, yes. It's based off of G's Revenge. This is a movie, Godzilla's Revenge, for many years was reviled.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, as potentially one, if not the worst Godzilla movie, right?
Yeah.
By many fans. Now, all of a sudden, I've noticed over the last, between 4 to 6 years, roughly, that, and a lot of this, I give credit to David Cowlett, because he's the first person I saw that really started looking at this movie more seriously. If you've read his book, forgive me if I get the title wrong, but it's like a critical filmography of Toho's Godzilla films, I think is what it's called. It's been a while since I looked at the book, but he, from my understanding, is really the first person who, at least with some sort of authority or gravitas, some sort of expertise behind him, who really came out and really sort of, again, I'm sorry, who really came behind the film and said, no, this film is more serious, it's darker, it's better than what many fans have given this film credit for over the decades. And then all of a sudden you started seeing this shift. And there's still some people out there, yes, that look at this film and say it's one, if not the worst. But that has shrunk significantly just in these last few years. I forgot where I was going with this.
You were saying that it was like at first it was terrible, and then
right, but I forgot my point. The point I was trying to make. Oh, now I remember. Can we sit here right now and really sort of just kind of stop with the Godzilla's Revenge discussions in terms of this is more serious or not? Because I feel like the fandom at large, because again, there's been this huge shift towards respecting the film, and that's great. That's fine. I don't care one way or the other. I'm not in love with the film, but I don't hate it either. To me, Revenge is kind of in the middle. Let's kind of quit with the discussion on this film as far as is it good or bad or whatever. Megalon's the same way. Megalon has a lot of fault. But again, I think there's more to it. August Ragoni, I would argue, has been the one major individual with, again, expertise behind him who has really championed that film, like David Callett has championed Revenge. That film, I think, unfortunately has gotten more flack than it deserves as well. I mean, again, is it perfect? By all means not. But let's just kind of cease the discussion here, okay? I don't even know if I even really made my point all that well, but
doesn't quite sound like it.
If I think about it more here in a bit, then maybe I'll come back to it.
All right, and here is the schedule for Friday.
By the way, let's quickly see if there are any comments here first.
So let's
this is your computer. I'm not going to mess with it.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hosting a panel, Exterm Central. I'm hosting a panel at 2 p.m. on Saturday, July 23rd in Ballroom 1. Nessie the Kaiju, the Hammer Locked Away. All about the unmade Toho Hammer Nessie collaboration from the 70s. Name's Greg. I'm sorry if I, trounce your last name here. Greg Noneman?
Or Greg Numman?
Again, I apologize in advance to anybody whose name I say on here. If I botch it, I apologize. I did see that on the schedule. I know that's something that's been going around Facebook in various Godzilla / Kaiju groups.
I'm probably guessing this. He meant 13th there instead of 23rd.
I was going to say, I looked at that. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. But yeah, it's probably the 13th. But yeah, I mean, that's something that... And wasn't the guy, one of the guests last year, what was his name? Wasn't he involved in that? Or am I thinking a different project? I might be thinking of a different project. I think I am thinking of a different project. I think I am, because that one was group funded. I'm thinking of something different. But I do remember seeing this, and I remember seeing this on the schedule, and I have heard of this at least in a few groups and pages on Facebook. So awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for doing that. We will definitely, as we go down the list here, hit that up and discuss it. So since you did Thursday and I did a monologue for a bit there, I'll do Friday, July 12th, the first kind of official kickoff of GFEST, and we'll just kind of go down, and anything that we see here we can discuss. At 11 o'clock, GFEST orientation. Anybody who is new to GFEST and wants to get a familiarity with it.
It's pretty much self-explanatory.
Right. At noon, I guess you could say, is the first official panel starting, one of the first official panels starting. Godzilla's Revenge at 50. There you go. Basically, a panel discussing 50 years of Godzilla's Revenge. It is going to be discussed by Martin Arl, Danny Tokars, Kim Taborn, Jeff Horn, and Kevin Horn. That's one of the panels I definitely want to go to. I mean, I love these anniversary panels. Kevin Horn is typically involved with these sort of anniversary panels, and you know, I mean, that guy is a wealth of knowledge on a lot of stuff. And all that. And I mean, you know, everybody else here, I know I've seen Martin in a panel. Danny, I'm not sure if I've seen in a panel. I'm sorry, Danny. If I have, I don't remember.
Doesn't quite sound familiar.
Jeff. Hi, Jeff. Jeff is great too. But yeah, that's definitely one of the panels I really want to go to. I love those anniversary panels just because I think it's always great to go back and just kind of over the years, just kind of see how far we've come, I guess, with a particular film.
Yeah.
Also at noon, Monstrosities, a panel of tokusatsu. We'll just read the description here because I'm not sure exactly what that's about. From the kings who battle three-headed dragons to mechas fighting giant chicken monsters, chill with the team behind Monstrosities Tokusatsu vlog for a conversation on all things kaiju, spandex, suited heroes, and tokusatsu. Plus get a chance to win free merch with our manga face contest with Matt Burkett, Brian Napolitano, Max Frank, wonder if he's any relation to Matt Frank, and Nathan, oh boy, I'm sorry, Wachowski or Wisaki Grady.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of interesting.
It sounds pretty interesting. I might take a peek in it just to see how that would go about in it. Well, it seems like they're going to be doing a contest during the panel, just from how this thing reads, especially winning free merch and everything in there. But I don't know if it's going to mainly focus on Godzilla side, or is it going to expand into like Gamera or Ultraman, that sort of thing. I'm hoping it does. But yeah, what would you think?
I have no idea. I honestly don't. I'm just reading off of this. I mean, on all to me, the thing that really tells me what a conversation on all things kaiju, I think it's basically just a free for all on the genre is really what it is. I don't know how you would start that panel, but yeah. But look at us. I mean, I go on these tirades about Yongari and Godzilla 98 all the time, and I somehow shoehorn it in all the time, and Shin Godzilla too. See, I was trying to go a whole episode without mentioning it, and you brought it up.
Well, since you're in that sort of area, I had to bring it up.
But also at noon, the last panel. Well, I guess I say last because it's listed as the last noon panel on the schedule, even though it starts at the same time as the other three. Sekizawa and Kimura, A Tale of Two Screenwriters. Most of Toho's classic tokusatsu films started with scripts penned by the Showa-era creative team's unsung heroes, Shinichi Sekizawa and Takeshi Kimura. Joined Nathan Marquand, professional writer and co-creator of Kaiju Vision Radio, and Daniel Demana, creator, author of the Godzilla novelization project, as they explain how these polar opposite storytellers revolutionized the Kaiju genre. Definitely a panel I would love to go to as well, but again, it's going to collide with the Revenge panel at the same time. I really like this because one of the books I've read, and I forget who wrote it. I want to say it was either David Callett or maybe it was Steve Reifel, who still owes me an interview. 15 years later, by the way. He said so in an email. He reached out to me, by the way. One of those guys wrote something in one of their books on these two screenwriters. And if I remember this correctly, Kimura was the guy who penned, I believe, such films like Rodan. And his screenplays, for the most part, were darker. They were not as, I guess you could say, happy ending type of tales. Whereas Sekizawa was more in line with what Honda was looking for in his films, where Sekizawa wasn't afraid to go serious, but he was more lighter hearted. He wanted to have more happy endings involved with his stories. And this, I think, would be an awesome panel to go to as well. But again, like I said, at least for me, it collides with a panel, another panel that I want to go to at that time period. But that, I think, by and large, would still be a wonderful panel to go to, especially if you're a fan of the Showa era, not just Godzilla films, but Showa era kaiju films. Excuse me. This would be a wonderful panel to really kind of get an idea of why some of the movies were written the way that they were, and it's because you had different writers, and of course, some people would go, "Well, duh, yeah, I mean that makes sense," because not every movie was written, in a particular genre, written by the same individuals. Like not all Marvel movies are written by the same one or two people. They're different writers.
Yeah.
But I think for people who may not be too familiar with the genre, Kimura and Sekizawa, by and large, with the occasional exception, it was rare, but there were a couple other writers here and there. But by and large, these two guys were responsible for a large chunk of the earlier kaiju films in terms of the screenplays.
Mm-hmm.
And so very unique and interesting styles. Both definitely don't get as much credit. Although Sekizawa, I would argue, over the last 8 to 10 years has definitely gotten a lot more of the due within Western kaiju fandom. Because he's definitely been brought up. I know he's been brought up numerous times in recent GFEST at various panels I've been to. But Kimura, unfortunately, doesn't get as much credit. And part of that is because he didn't write as many screenplays as Sekizawa did. I'm hosting the panel right now, actually. You don't need to go to this panel. I'm talking about these two guys right now. But Kimura didn't write as many of the screenplays during the earlier, during the earlier period of kaiju films as Sekizawa did. And so, of course, Sekizawa is going to get most of the credit. But, yeah, that still would be a fun panel to go to.
I can probably take a look at that for a few minutes. Yeah, I think it'd be a definite set-in for that one as well. I think out of the 3 panels at around the noon time, I probably would say both of those would be more interesting.
Yeah, it definitely would be.
Yeah, but then I would say, possibly go back and forth.
How do you scroll down
one of those
thing?
two? You just do that and slide it down.
I'm looking for the scroll tab on the side. It wasn't showing up.
Yeah, you just go up and down with this pad right here.
Okay. One of the panels now that starts at 1:00. Objectively, scientifically, the best non-Godzilla Toho kaiju ever, period. It seems like, and I don't know if it's by the same individuals, because I'm sorry I didn't. It may be, actually. Because I know John LeMay was part of the one last year where it was the best Godzilla movie ever, period.
Yeah,
I think these are the same guys.
I could have sworn that there was a panel that sounded a bit familiar.
Yes, I would say this is sort of the sequel to that panel. The description here: everyone loves Godzilla. How could you not? Simply put, he's the king of the monsters. But who's your second favorite Godzilla movie kaiju? With Godzilla out of the picture, it's a Royal Rumble for second place. So I guess it's not about the movies, it's just about the kaiju. I still remember last year, what was it? Sea Monster and was it Baialani?
Yeah, Baialani
semifinal, and Sea Monster came out the victor.
No, it was Baialani.
Baialani. Still, though, that was surprising to see Sea Monster there. That was great, though. But
yeah, I was fairly surprised at that myself.
But also at 1:00, Jeopardy adult qualifier game for players 13 and up. I went to the one, 2 years ago. When are you going to try to qualify here?
I don't know.
You need to try, dude. This is our 8th one. I did it back on our 6th GFEST. And the thing is time goes by so blasted fast. But I keep telling myself, okay, after a GFEST, I'm going to go home and I'm going to start reading, my books, by David Khaled, August Rigoni, Steve Reifel, and all that. And I'm going to hit legitimate magazines that have information on stuff too. And I'm going to watch all the movies multiple times. I'm going to watch, the special features on these films as well to learn people's names and what they did and behind the scenes stuff. And every year I don't do it. I forget to do it. And then when I remember to do it, it's too late because there's not enough time for me to try to cram all of that stuff. It's not just the Godzilla movies.
Yeah, it's the same for me, since you always keep pounding me to do it. It's like, well, I
did it. I did it 2 years ago without any prep beforehand. I just said, to hell with it, I'm going to do it. And I was one of the 3 people that got up there in one of those qualifier games. But yeah, you just need to try. Just fill out the sheet and see if you get up there.
Yeah, well, we'll see on that.
You got to try it, man. Also at 1 o'clock, Green Slime. It's time for some late 60s sci-fi fun with the Green Slime. The theme song for the movie really says it all with Kevin Horn. Again, Kevin Horn, any panel he's on, you really need to check out. Green Slime, fun movie. I saw bits and parts of it, years ago, and then I finally bought the movie a few years back and watched it several times. That's a fun little movie.
Yeah, I have not seen that one. I know that they were showing it at the Pickwick Theater on a Thursday, maybe a year or 2 ago. And I know you were debating about doing it, and of course,
I got that. I can bring that DVD with us. We can watch it over this next week.
You can if you want to.
It's a fun film. It's really wacky. It's really fun. I mean, it's fun. To me, if I were to describe it in any way, it's sort of like Forbidden Planet, but with more strange creatures and just crazy go nuts. Crazy. I mean,
crazy go nuts, craziness.
Yeah, it's a fun film. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. It's just fun. You have to see it if you haven't. At 2 o'clock, Cheesy Monsters raid again. A world in extreme danger of laughing our butts off. We love our monsters, even when they're dripping with cinematic cheese. Join comic writers Tony Isabella as we... Oh, okay, I read that wrong.
Over 50 of the crazy creatures that we remember too fondly.
So fondly. That seems like it would be kind of fun to do. I mean, it seems like it's going to span monster movies in general. It doesn't matter whether it's East or West.
Yeah, because it doesn't say anything specific.
Yeah, I mean, it would be definitely, I think, fun to check out. It's really, I think it would be fun because there have been some crazy monsters over the years. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun. Also at 2 o'clock, Jeopardy Adult Qualifier Game 2.
Nothing said there.
At 2 o'clock, Bandai and Tsuburaya. Join your hosts as they discuss the history between Bandai and Tsuburaya Productions and how this relationship has affected the Ultraman franchise in recent years with R.J. Axon, Matt Parmley, and Kevin Dieridorf. So it just kind of sounds like Bandai working in tandem with Tsuburaya to create toys, I guess. That's my guess.
Toys, games, because I know Bandai also does games as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of where that's going.
Mm-hmm. At 3 o'clock, Paleontologist Panel, the sequel. So what is Godzilla? It's a question that roams around in every fan's mind. Is he an amalgamation of sea life, an ancient predator awoken after millions of years, a dinosaur mutated from nuclear fallout? Come and help us use deductive reasoning and comparative anatomy to determine what Godzilla is. Come scratch your paleo itch and discuss biology, paleontology, and comparative anatomy as we look at Godzilla from a paleontological point of view with Dennis Roth. Anybody who owns the official Godzilla compendium, it was released in 1998 when the 98 TriStar film was released. And there was a section in that particular compendium, and I don't think it was written by Dennis Roth. I think it was written by someone else, where it looked at Godzilla from a paleontological standpoint.
I think J.D. Lees was part of that.
He was part of the compendium, yes. But as far as that particular article, it was written by a paleontologist. But yeah, there was something in that compendium where it was looking at Godzilla from a paleontological viewpoint. I think, of course, a lot of people get into Godzilla because they love dinosaurs first. That's kind of how I got started. Was because I loved dinosaurs before I loved Godzilla, and going into Godzilla was sort of the result of my love of dinosaurs. But yeah, if you love dinosaurs, check that out, I guess.
Yep.
Also at 3:00, Kaiju Transmissions podcast presents 30 years of Godzilla vs. Biollante. That's right. There's another anniversary. Also, I think Gamera vs. Virus has an anniversary this year too. 50 years, I think.
Well, I think if you just read down the next panel.
Oh, no, it's Giron right there. There it is. It's Giron. I started thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. I think we went to a Virus panel last year.
Yeah.
An in-depth look at the making of the 1989 classic, including unused scripts, the manga adaptation, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, with Matt Parmley, Kyle Berg, Kevin Dierendorf, and John LeMay. Again, I love anniversary type of panels. This will be one I may try. Oh, man, but Giron also starts at 3. This is the problem we come into just about every year, our scheduling conflicts. Certain good panels are starting at the same time.
After going to these for 8 years, it's always bound to happen.
Yeah, but hard to believe, man, 30 years ago now with Biollante.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, there has been so much information out there on Biollante. It just, I mean, at least for me personally, I would like to still go to it. I don't know, though. I just don't know if there's much more I could learn on that panel. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I know sort of the general storylines of it.
And I've seen the behind-the-scenes videos on that, and as well as I think I've read up on the manga. I think that behind-the-scenes stuff covers some of the manga as well, and then of course we see some of the deleted stuff in as well. And I think they talk about some of the scripts that they don't even use.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah. I may actually, now that I think about it, go to this next one, Gamera versus Giron. It's all fun and games until Gauss loses a head. Come celebrate 50 years of Gamera versus Giron. Our panel of experts has you covered for fun facts and nostalgic discussion on the Flying Turtles' most notorious adventure with Tristan Domey and Mike Sutton. That might be the one I will go to, because like I said, I've read an awful lot on bio. There's a lot of info. There's not a ton of information out there on Gamera. I mean, there really hasn't. The closest that I think, because to my knowledge, no one has written an official book on Gamera for the West, and the closest we have to something that gives us some in-depth knowledge of some of these films were the first 2 releases by Shout Factory, 7 years ago or something like that now.
I think it's a little bit more than that.
Where August Rigoni did commentary for the first 2 films, Gamera and Gamera versus Barugon, where he provided commentary, and then unfortunately Shout Factory didn't have any more money to do that for the sequels after that. So that's about the closest we have. That's the panel I'll probably go to during that time slot. Is that one.
And then this one seems to be the usual panel every year. At 4:00, Godzilla bringing down to size.
The story behind the making of Classic Media's documentary film on the history of Japanese special effects, featuring exclusive making photos and footage with Ed Gajaszewski and Steve Rifle, who owes me an interview. If I understand this correctly, this is a panel on the making of the documentary. Am I understanding that that's what this is going to be?
That's what it says. The story behind the making of Classic Media's documentary film on the history of Japanese science special effects.
That seems a little goofy to me, that you would have a making of the making of. I don't know. Maybe it might be interesting because are there other panels that, in my opinion, is the one, maybe the only good panel during that time. So I might check that out. I don't know. That doesn't seem interesting to me. A making of the making of.
I would actually would rather go to the final 4:00 panel.
Well, we'll get to that here in a second. Yeah. The other 4:00 panel is Jeopardy 2019 Kids Championship. Also at 4:00, Kaiju fans and media, the good, the bad, and the Kenny. Ever wonder how movies, TV, or comics would represent the GFEST demographic? Wonder no more, because this panel covers portrayals of characters who are wild about kaiju and Japanese superheroes, as well as the rise of Japanese otaku culture with Kevin Derendorf. It seems interesting, but more than anything else, I would think this particular panel, with what will be shown to us, is going to be nothing more than the stereotypical geek stuff, where, you know, the guy who wears tube socks, short shorts, has zits, glasses, a slur in his speech, and maybe an overbite or an underbite, and looks disheveled and looks like he just got out of bed.
Yeah.
That's, to me, is probably... I mean, I don't wonder how people represent us, because I've seen it before in cartoons and other TV shows and films. So, I mean, I guess I probably will go down to Bringing Godzilla Down in Size, but even that seems a little goofy to me.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't know.
I'm definitely not going to the Jeopardy Kid Championship. I'm sorry. I'm not going to that.
Yeah, I would say that would be a given at least. But, so...
All right, to sort of close out the day here, thank God, because I need you to take over here for Saturday. At 7:00, opening ceremonies. At 7:30, roughly, young fan costume parade. Yeah, they started changing that, because typically both the adult and the kids were always like Saturday night.
Well, and I think that they had them as one.
Oh, well, it says right here. Due to ever increasing participation, GFEST again is offering 2 costume parades. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Friday night features young fans displaying their and their parents' handiwork. And then at 10:30 at the Pickwick is Godzilla King of the Monsters. That you can give me to go to Pickwick. But the problem is 10:30, and it's like a 2-hour, 15-minute movie.
Yeah, so it'll be at least after midnight, maybe getting close to 1:00.
Yeah.
So with that
rounds up Friday, the first day of GFEST.
Yeah.
Let's check, see if there are any comments here.
Yeah, let's go back here.
Here we go.
We got a couple.
I'd love to say howdy to both of you during the con, so don't be shy about saying hello to me in person. This marks my 3rd GFEST, started going in 2017. Kevin Derendorf, whom is hosting Kaiju Fans, and is one of my panelists on the Nestle panel Sunday. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely we'd like to say hi to you. Yeah, Kevin Derendorf is very knowledgeable. He doesn't get as much credit within kind of the fandom, but I guess maybe part of that is because he doesn't put himself out there enough, I guess. But he's definitely knowledgeable. I've noticed he's participated more, definitely participated more in panels in recent years.
All right, so let's kick off Saturday, June 13th itinerary here for day 2. At 9:00 is the Summit Kaiju Creative Contest. The Summit Kaiju panel will be unveiling the winners of the Summit Kaiju Online Creative Photo Contest. That's somewhat of a mouthful, along with discussions about toy photography and kaiju toy collecting with Jeremy Soles. That's sorry if I butchered your name on that one. I would say that
I've never heard of this Summit Kaiju contest.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that anywhere last year or anything previous, but it sort of sounds interesting. I know probably would have, as mentioned in the final sentence or first sentence of the final line, however you say it, I would say just be talking about taking pictures of your figures in certain environments that they've been built specifically for them, and then talking about, obviously toy collecting.
That's interesting. The way I pick up on this summary here, it seems to me like it's basically just handing out awards that may take 15, 20 minutes or something of this panel. And then the rest of it, majority of it, is going to be about toy photography and toy collecting. The toy photography is what gets me, because I don't ever recall hearing any sort of panel in the past, the GFEST we've gone to, which is interesting because there is an art behind it. It's not just your manufacturers like Bandai, X Plus, and whatever doing photographs of figures so that they can sell them to you, which, by the way, the X Plus Defo Real SD98 Godzilla, that's phony photography on X Plus's part. The figure does not look like what the photos show. And I got proof because I own the figure.
And you can see on DaikaijuNetwork.com. It's the latest thing.
But anyway, and I don't know if you ever did this, and I don't know if they're still around. I haven't looked in a long time. But clubtokyo.org, I think, was the URL. This was a site that more or less...
I think that was part of the whole Monster Zero.
And Monster Zero hasn't been around because, unfortunately, and I forget the guy's name, who was the...
Let me
Adam
take a
something
look.
I want to say was the guy's name. He died.
You said clubtokyo.org?
I think, yeah. Because that was a site that more or less, they're still around.
Yep.
That's awesome, because this was a site I frequented quite a bit for a couple of years, like way back, I think the early 2000s, I want to say, just to see figures of what was out there. This is before the internet really took off and you had some of these online vendors and what have you. This has always, in my opinion, been like the best site to go get photos of just almost every toy ever created that was kaiju related. And it still is, in my opinion, like the place to go. And I think all of their photography is original for that site. I don't think they use the photography from like any of the manufacturers.
Just from looking at it here, I think it is their, like, everything is originally.
Can you imagine how expensive all that would have to be? Because you're practically buying everything. Yeah. Can you imagine how expensive that is?
Maybe either that or just somewhat
stuff.
Maybe either that or somewhat borrowing. Sort of. I don't know if they also had some other ways.
I mean, I'm sure there are at least a handful of people involved,
or maybe they could have asked for some help from other people, and they could have taken pictures, and maybe ask for some specific ways of taking pictures. And all that.
Okay, Saturday the 13th in Ballroom 1. Plenty of amazing Nessie fan art and exclusive art books for sale. John LeMay, Justin Mullis, and Samuel Eiler are my other panelists. I am familiar with John LeMay's work. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing about the other panelists. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's awesome. I think we're going to be coming up to that here. Really, why don't you scroll down?
Yeah. So also at 9:00 is was it the Philo Barnhart interview with Charles
I'm sorry, but who is he?
Moisant? Yeah, I don't know either.
Let's quickly do a quick Google search of who he is.
So let's see here.
I don't remember hearing about him being a guest here.
Yeah, I don't even think they even advertise him. It's maybe with.
Oh, he's an artist?
Yeah, looks like it. He looks like
he's an animator. I wonder if he was involved with the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon.
So that's what I'm thinking too, because like here he's holding up the title card for Super Friends, and then looks like he's
from back in the day.
Like you can see things of Ariel and all that. I have a feeling that he's involved.
I don't recall hearing or seeing anything in it. It doesn't mean they didn't, but
Yeah, it's like I don't remember seeing in the special guest list on the GFEST page here, but that's sort of what I'm guessing all of this is alluding to with this individual here. But other than that, let's move on. Also at 9 o'clock is the Japanese culture with yokai way.
Those have been
You're cutting me off
no,
here.
I'm just checking some stuff. That has.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
Yeah. Spirits of Oban, if that's how you pronounce it. In Japan, Oban season, July and August, is traditionally the time to visit cemeteries and invite ancestral spirits to visit and hold Bon Odori dance festivals to entertain spooky supernatural guests. You'll have a chance to learn more about these customs and to be part of the first ever Yokai Odori, a group dance created especially for our own summer festival GFEST with Joyce Boss.
So that means quickly get out of there before you do that.
Well, and it's going to be held. It's going to be held in the Kennedy room, which is one of those small rooms on this lower floor.
And that's the thing, because this is, I think, Joyce Boss's third year of holding a panel on yokai.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been so popular, I mean, incredibly popular, that not only is there standing room only within a matter of minutes of her panel starting, it overflows out into the hallway, no joke. And these are some of the most popular panels. And she was saying a year or two ago that she was going to try to get it in one of the bigger ballrooms up on the upper level. And here she is stuck in the Kennedy room.
I'm still surprised that they have it in the small rooms, or at least have it in, was it Love A and or B? Because I know last year those were overtaken by like a non-GFEST meeting or some sort of thing. So that's why
whoever is involved with coordinating rooms at the hotel for GFEST panels, please move Joyce to a larger room, because her panels are some of the biggest attended panels, and there's never any space. They're always crowded.
Yeah, they probably would have to be in ballroom 1 or 2.
I mean, her panels people are excited and interested in this stuff, and I think part of it is because not only is there more of an influx of Japanese pop culture that involves yokai coming into the West, but Yokai Watch, popular game series, has invaded handheld Nintendo consoles in recent years as well.
And so the next panel at 10 o'clock, it's another anniversary here, Delving into the Shadows, 50 Years of Mirror Man. And I've been wanting to watch this series for quite some time. And I know one of the guys
isn't he also Spectre Man, or does Spectre Man go by a different
name? Spectre Man goes by a different name.
Okay, I get the two mixed up.
Mirror Man, he's more like in this silverish
That's what
suit
I thought.
With some green stripes.
And is his helmet like more rectangular and bulky?
Something like that, yeah. So from the company that brought you Ultraman comes Mirror Man, Tsuburaya's first non-Ultraman series and its first foray into more mature storytelling. That sounds pretty interesting. We will explore its beginnings in the legacy it left behind with Andrew Battaglia.
I think he did the Golden Bat panel last year, I think.
I think that would be
interesting, definitely, to go with.
However, this next one is also going to be somewhat conflicting.
Pay attention here. Look at what it says here. Interview Akira Takarada at 10, Ballroom 2. There's no information on it. But you go up here, just a little ways back to Philo Barnhart. It's got who's interviewing him. Akira Takarada is so big of a badass, they realize you don't care who's going to be interviewing him.
I think he's probably going to be. He's probably going to be interviewing himself.
Akira Takarada, how great of an actor were you on Gojira? Gosh, I was the best. I should have gotten an Academy Award for the Americanization of it. Raymond Burr.
And also at 10 o'clock here is collecting Godzilla movies on home video. With the rights to 35 movies divided between 8 companies. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Collecting the Godzilla movies on home video is no easy task, which is pretty true. We'll point you towards the best possible releases and offer our theories on what Criterion has planned for the Showa series. So it sounds like they'll also be talking about that.
Is there insider information?
Who knows if you
Are
go
any
to
of these
it.
guys involved with Criterion?
With Will Offit, if that's how you pronounce it, and Michael Kalari.
That's an interesting panel. I mean, I remember growing up, I had a friend for about a year who had, I think, 1 or 2 different versions of Godzilla films on VHS than what we had. But as far as the whole bit, though, about what Criterion has planned for the Showa series, unless either one of these guys has insider information, and even then, I don't think they would necessarily be able to share such information. We're not going to know until something actually happens.
And also what it says here, the keyword theories on what they're on what they have planned for the Showa series.
Well, my theory is that Criterion, yes, is eventually going to release them.
I would say so as well.
That's my theory.
Plus, I think it would be so much easier. Plus, when it comes to Criterion, they do so much better job when it comes to the quality of some of these classic movies.
Now, I will stop you sort of right there, because I think the license to the Godzilla movies they got, and even like Rodan, all of those movies, except maybe 1 or 2, were ones released by Classic Media like 12 plus years ago. Classic Media did a hell of a job with those films. They presented them in great definition for what was available at the time for DVDs, because Blu-ray wasn't around yet. And there were great special features on all of those as well. In fact, you have a making of panel at this year's GFEST that was involved with one of those Classic Media licenses that Criterion picked up. So Classic Media did a hell of a job. For me personally, outside of anything that's really new, that's been released here in the West officially, I will say, Classic Media, those releases they have of the films that they owned until Criterion bought them, are some of my personal favorites, because there's just so much on them. I mean, they're presented, the menus are great, and the extras are wonderful.
And also for what Kraken Releasing has done with at least a few of the releases.
Kraken,
they've done a pretty good job, I would say.
Okay, he worked on the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon. So we were right. We took a shot in the dark and we were right. And I kind of wondered. I saw the Super Friends and I thought he had to work on the Hanna-Barbera, because that's the same time frame.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, for that.
All right. Take it back here. Let's go back here. So then at 11 o'clock is the Kaiju Kingdom podcast, which I'm also familiar with, and I've listened to at least a couple episodes so far. So I know I'm going to butcher this last name here, person. Jessica Sang.
Yeah, that's how.
And Chris Eaton returned to GFEST to discuss the popularity of Toho's greatest creation, success of Legendary's Godzilla King of the Monsters, behind the scenes of working on the film, and what the future holds for Godzilla vs. Kong.
The future holds moolah.
That's what it holds. And then also same thing with Akira Takarada.
I never heard of him coming this year either.
Oh, I have. He's been on the list for months.
We are talking about Shusuke Kaneko.
Yep. Which he'll be having, was shown here, interview number 1 at 11 o'clock a.m. in Ballroom 2. And then also at 11 o'clock in the Kennedy Room, which this seems to be, the name is somewhat, has a non-kaiju title, Prophecies of Nostradamus.
Have you heard of it, though? Have you heard of it?
No.
I have. So that makes me a better fan than you. No. In 1974, hell, you read it. This is your day.
Yeah. I was thinking, it's like, why were you reading it? In 1974, Toho releases the disaster movie called Prophecies of Nostradamus. This panel, led by Chris Underwood, he was the guy that did. Was it that
House of Cards?
No. Men in Suits documentary.
That's him?
Yeah, I think so. That name sounds familiar.
I think that was a different guy that did Men in Suits.
Because that Underwood name sounds pretty familiar. Well, you stop. Will uncover its history as well as the controversies surrounding the little-known film.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I think so. Then again, there's, as always, conflicting schedule. So it's in the end, it would be up in the air there. So at noon in Ballroom 1, the all-new Sonorama panel with
Kamishibai.
Before you start, join Stan Hyde and Len Medlock for a celebration of classic kaiju art and artists. You'll see the stories of your favorite kaiju that have been carefully guarded secrets until now. And there'll be some classic kaiju storytelling as well.
So for the last 3, maybe this will be the 3rd or 4th year, Stan has done a panel on Sonoramas. And you know what these are because you've seen these. You probably don't recognize the name, but they're those very colorful posters where like King Kong versus King Ghidorah. Stuff like that. That's what those are. And those panels have been some of my favorites in recent years because thousands of these things were made back in the day. And they're like sort of your fanboy wet dreams in which you see certain kaiju mashing up, like the Gargantuous fighting Godzilla and Rodan or something like that. Like these things are not only just well painted and
very
drawn,
detailed,
but they're fun to look at. Again, there's one I still remember. Every time I think of Sonoramas, I think of the one where Kong is fighting Ghidorah and he's got one of the Ghidorah heads in a headlock. Check out like Kaiju Sonoramas or Godzilla Sonoramas on Google or what have you. You'll see a bunch of them. And I mean, there's just tons of these things out there. They're beautiful. I've more or less stopped collecting art because I have so much of it. I still have most of it boxed up, unfortunately. But I've always thought to myself, man, if they ever like officially release Sonoramas and sold them, even if they were reproductions, I would do my damnedest to buy every single one of those and actually hang them up. Those things are so wonderful.
But then I would bet you anything someone would at least make them expensive.
No, not if you do reproductions.
So,
but also, check that stuff out.
So also at noon, next door in Ballroom 2, Dawn of the Monsters official panel. Creative director Alex Rushdie guides you through the announcement and the updates of the brand new Kaiju video game, including special prizes and exclusive ways to get involved in the development.
I've never heard of this new game. I don't. Is whatever happened to that other video game? Because 2 or 3 years ago they demoed it in the dealer's room. I don't think it was this one. I think that was a different one.
I think it was a card game.
No, because the one I'm thinking of was involved with computers. It was like a Street Fighter type game where, it was a fighter game. But I forget what it was called. Colossal Kaiju, Colossal Beasts. Matt Frank did some artwork promos for him.
I know I've seen the logo.
He has it, I think, even on his DeviantArt page, I think.
I know I've seen the logo of that.
What was it called? But Matt Frank did some promo art.
I think it was Colossal Kaiju.
Yeah, whatever happened to that?
I think it might have been out. I don't know. If it
did, it came out with a whimper because they had a period of 1 to 2 years in which they did crowdfunding for that game, and then they demoed
Colossal
it.
Kaiju Combat.
Colossal Kaiju Combat. They had a year or two where they did crowdfunding for that, and then I don't know how many years later they.
Is that what you're thinking of?
Yes, that's the one. And then they demoed it at one of the GFESTs a couple of years later, and then I never heard or saw anything of it after that.
Yeah, it's like created by Simon Strange's company, Sunstone Games, the creators of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, Godzilla Save the Earth, and Godzilla Unleashed. After encountering a series of developmental difficulties, the project was put on indefinite hiatus in January 2016 and then canceled in late 2017.
Oh no. I hope people got their money back.
Let's take a further look into this
side. Well, they're talking about the money. Yeah, because that's Matt Frank's work there. That's too bad, because I know Matt Frank was pumping this project up, because he was using some of his artwork to try to get people to donate. What in the world happened to it? Like, I mean, I know they.
Let's see. Originally, Sunstone Games was going to create a fourth Godzilla game using the same technology used to create Godzilla Unleashed. Colossal Kaiju Combat was originally called Kaiju Combat, but copyright issues with the creators of the car game Kaijudo caused Sunstone Games to change the brand name to Colossal Kaiju Combat.
Oh man, that's sad, because I remember this thing. It was being hyped around the kaiju community here in the West for a couple of years, because, I remember Matt Frank, because, he was involved with artwork. He was like, people donate, donate, donate. And then they demoed it at one of the GFests, and then that was it. And you didn't hear anything about it again after that.
There's something here on the Steam here. The makers of Godzilla Save the Earth.
This has to be a trailer. Kaijulian Battles.
It says release date August 11, 2014. Early access game. So I'm guessing that this at $4.99.
It has to be a beta.
I would think so too.
Yeah, I mean, just the fighter game.
Just the way that the graphics look. I mean, it looks pretty unfinished.
Bad. Yeah, that's so strange though too, because like I said, you heard about this thing like crazy for a couple of years.
Oh yeah,
and then it just kind of faded.
Mm-hmm.
That's so strange.
So I'm hopefully with this potentially new one here, Dawn of the Monsters, I hope that it actually goes through this time around. So with that.
At 10 a.m. on Saturday, Akira Takarada is being interviewed too. And at 1 p.m., Peggy Neal is being interviewed also in Ballroom 2. Colossal Kaiju Combat. Greg's like 5 steps ahead of us.
Well,
he needs to be hosting this podcast, not us.
Well, we've just been haven't been checking the comments not too much, because at the same time we've got the list here of the panels up as well. So at noon in the Kennedy room is nope.
Yeah, we already talked about that one.
Yeah, I was just making sure. Drawing with Matt and Hiroshi. Joining artists Matt Frank and Hiroshi Kanatani as they both draw kaiju for your entertainment.
That Hiroshi guy, he friended me on Facebook 3 years ago. He's really good.
And then at 1 o'clock in Ballroom 1, Heisei Gamera look back. And I'm guessing this is the reason why. In the late 90s, Susuke Kaneko released a groundbreaking film trilogy featuring Gamera, the Kaiju Turtle, with intriguing scripts, interesting characters, and groundbreaking special effects within miniature work. These films became instant fan favorites. Our panelists will discuss all 3 films of the trilogy and the impact they had on the kaiju genre.
There is no individual panel this year on the 20th anniversary of Gamera 3.
That's right.
So, I know because I saw this list once, and I do not recall seeing anything that's a 20th anniversary Gamera panel, and I'm wondering if this is sort of that substitute.
I'm guessing you could be right on that. And also,
20 years of Gamera 3. 20 years of Gamera 3.
Hard to believe.
20 years.
Just like last year was 20 years of the 98 Godzilla.
And I remember seeing that in theaters.
And so also at 1 o'clock in Ballroom 2 is the Peggy Neal interview. And then
That's
nothing
cool.
there. And also at 1 o'clock in the Kennedy Room, Discovering Godzilla, a discussion of the first time fans discovered Godzilla, specifically focusing on when it was and how that shaped opinions of Godzilla in different eras, Showa, Heisei, Millennium, and Legendary, with Scott Wetherall, Chris Oglio, and Oglio and Martin Alt.
That would be fun, because that I think is more that sounds like it would be not just. Hopefully, they include some people from the. I'm getting brain farts. Hopefully, they include some people who are attending the panel to kind of just tell their stories too. That would be fun, because I think every person's story is unique as far as when they were first introduced to Godzilla, and of course how it shaped him. It's like, oh, look at us, we become these big weirdos who love giant monsters and all that. So.
Yeah.
And Greg's
here's Greg's panel right here. Nessie, the kaiju that Hammer locked away. Yeah, I think so. At 2 o'clock in Ballroom 1. Much like Loch Ness Monster, Toho's late 1970s unmade Hammer co-produced monster movie Nessie is a mysterious subject of great speculation. Join our panel as they shine a light on the cryptid sci-fi film discussing the canceled production and the relationship between Japanese kaiju and cryptozoology. With Greg Nunman, Samuel Eiler, John LeMay, Justin Mullis, and Kevin Derendorf. I think that would be pretty interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, this reminds me of what was it earlier today? I was telling you, like over 20 years ago at our public library, we rented that. It was, I can't remember if it was co-produced between a Japanese studio and an American studio, if it was strictly Japanese, but it was like Age of Dinosaurs or something like that, where it basically had a plesiosaurus and a pterodactyl in it. And we could look it up here, but I swear it was called something like The Age of the Dinosaurs or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of got a cult following with kaiju fans here in the West. But that was kind of a strange film. But according to this, because I think of a Loch Ness Monster as being a plesiosaurus of sorts. It just kind of reminds me that's interesting. And it's so funny because making a film about Nessie, which is originated out of Scotland, half a world away, Japan is tackling attempted to tackle a movie about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, really.
But then again, though, too, take a look at what American studios have done as far as the sort of subject matters that they've covered.
Go back here.
Yeah, just as Legend of Dinosaurs and Monster Birds by Toei. Thank you. Legends of Dinosaurs. Greg, why aren't you doing more panels? You always know exactly what we're going after here.
And so at 2 o'clock in Ballroom 2 is History of Kaiju Art with Bob Eggleton. And 2 o'clock again, Kennedy Room Kaiju versus Parody. Ever wonder, with every kaiju movie being so serious without a hint of a joke or silliness, what a kaiju comedy movie would be like? Well, come on down and join YouTube weirdo Professor Kaiju as he discusses some kaiju parodies. And maybe, just maybe, you'll wish You'll Never Wondered in the first place with Bryce Professor Kaiju Dubik or Dubish?
Dubik, I'm thinking.
Yeah. And then at 3 p.m. in Ballroom 1 is Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Only one panel on the legendary Godzilla film this year.
I think it was that way too with...
They had 3.
Oh, really?
They had 3 about the 2014 film.
So after a 5-year wait, the sequel to 2014's Godzilla is out. For the first time, audiences have seen Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah interpreted on film by a studio other by a studio other
There
than...
should have been Zan in there.
Yeah, other than Toho. Did the film do the source materials justice? Find out how Titans fared as our panelists discuss the finer points of Legendary's latest monster blockbuster with Alistair Neal, Nathan Marchand, Jacob Smith, Ira Tabor, and Miguel Barroso.
I will say this. I've seen the film twice now. I've loved the film. It's entertaining as hell.
Hopefully number 3 tomorrow.
Maybe. I don't know. But because I got a lot of packing and stuff I got to get ready for. But the more I've thought about it and I've compared it with the 2014 film, 2014 film I think tells a better story.
I would say maybe...
I would even argue the 2014 film is even better acted all around.
I would say maybe at least with the human side.
King of the Monsters, it's so funny because Western fans' reception to King, and I'm glad it's doing well, but I find it so odd that very few of the people that complained about some of the issues with the 2014 film, some of those same issues are part of King of the Monsters, but they don't acknowledge that. It's so weird why that is the way that it is. It just, I mean, I love King of the Monsters, but the more I've thought about it, I'm just like, actually, the 2014 film tells a better story. And that, you know, that's not to say King of the Monsters is bad, but I think if you're looking for something that has a better told story, the 2014 film is the way to go. But King of the Monsters is still a lot of fun. It does seem, though, it's a weird jump, though. To me, and this is too much of, it's not a great analogy because I think the analogy I'm about to provide here has more of a bigger, deep end impact than what I'm actually trying to say. But you know how King Ghidorah, Godzilla's King Ghidorah, I've always said was a huge separation between the first 2 Heisei films. How those 2 films were dark in tone, more adult and serious, and then Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah comes along, much more lighthearted. It's just like really wacky with some of its premises. It's such a huge departure in tone and everything else, really, from those 2 Heisei films, those first 2 Heisei films. King of the Monsters isn't that big of a departure from the 2014 film. It's a lot more closer than King Ghidorah is with Bylani in 84. But this, to me, seems like, though, it's a big enough departure that I'm still kind of jarred by it a little bit. You know, it's kind of like how Mortal Kombat Annihilation was to the original Mortal Kombat. There were enough similarities there to where you're like, okay, yes, I see the ties. But at the same time, it was still so different. It's kind of jarring a little bit. It's kind of like that. I guess that's a better analogy than Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Then,
all right, 3 o'clock in Ballroom 2 is the Kaiju Cast 10th anniversary talk show. Come celebrate 10 years of podcasting about Godzilla and his rubber-suited foes with a live talk show format panel with the Kaiju Cast and special guests with Kyle Yount and Gretchen Brooks.
Congratulations, Kyle. 10 years. We started a year after Kyle. We were, obviously, anybody who's been following us long enough knows we were Planet X Control Room. And we started like late spring of 2010.
Well, we had a website that wasn't actually named Planet X Control Room. It was first
That's
called,
what I'm saying, though.
yeah.
Our podcast was Planet X Control Room. And we were doing pretty well there. And then we
were doing weekly podcasts.
We were doing weekly podcasts. And the reason why we started it up was not only because we wanted to talk about our love of Godzilla and all these films, but because at that time they were saying that what is now the 2014 Godzilla movie was supposed to be released in 2012. Well, then was it 3/11 happened in Fukushima.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were saying, no, the film is indefinitely put on hiatus. That killed it for us because we were trying to build up towards that 2012 film. And then we took a 1.5 hiatus, and then we kind of lost a lot of people following us after that. And then we came back sort of mid-2012 and found out, there were... I think two or three other kaiju podcasts that had come along during that time span while we were gone. But yeah, we came about it almost exactly a year after Kyle started his podcast. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we've had a big hiatus that sort of killed the momentum for us at the time. We had a huge momentum at one point.
Actually, a couple breaks that.
And then we changed our name here like 3 or so years ago as well to what it is now. But yeah, it's congratulations, Kyle. I mean, that's quite a feat. I can't believe technically we count us as having done 9 years of podcasting, even though we had a 1.5 years in which we didn't do anything there.
Yeah.
We were still around in website format, and our old episodes were still available on iTunes, but we hadn't been doing recent shows for a while there. But that would be fun. It's hard to believe it's been that long, because I remember discovering Kyle's podcast because it was shortly after we started ours, and I asked myself, I'm like, are there other people out there doing this? And I did a search on iTunes. His was the only one that popped up that I saw, and I'm like, we're the second Kaiju podcast out there. And, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
How time flies.
Yeah, it's like it almost felt like yesterday of us actually doing the very first episode, because I remember I was in my studio apartment at the time and sitting in front of the
I bought a real
desk.
crappy mic at Best Buy.
Yeah, and I actually still have my original microphone that I bought since that time. So this one is 9 years old, and probably for our 10th anniversary, I'll probably purchase a new microphone.
You will
a bit better.
You will on live video put this one out to pasture.
well, I do have the right necessary tools to do that. So, but in all realness, it's still in good shape and good quality, even with great audio that it does. So I probably wouldn't do anything of the sorts.
Anyway,
like
enough
that.
about us.
So with that, also at 3:00 in the Kennedy room is the Ready Player One, Anorak's Castle. The world of kaiju and tokusatsu played a big role in Ernest Cline's best-selling book, Ready Player One, which Spielberg would later film. A story that took fan service to the next level and culminated in a battle that fans of many niche genres would never forget. Learn about who showed up, what happened at the final battle, differences between the book and film, and trivia of how things all came together with Billy DuBose.
I own the movie and I own the book. I have yet to read the book, and I have yet to see the film.
Well, do you want to know like the
I know
epic
who
battle.
shows up. I know
Yeah.
Mechagodzilla shows up, and I think Ultraman even shows up. That's
Yeah,
what I
just
know.
as far as I know, just in the book. In the
Ultraman
movie,
shows up in the book, yes.
yes, but
in the movie Mechagodzilla.
yeah, it was just Mechagodzilla. However, they weren't able to attain rights for Ultraman for the movie, unfortunately. So right there, that's the big difference.
I know, like, I bought the book first because one of my close friends, she read it, and she likes a lot of these techie, nerdy books. And she was saying, you got to read the book. She's like, you got to read the book. You really have to read it before you see the movie. I bought it, have yet to read it. And then the movie came out on Blu-ray, gosh, whenever that was. And,
I think it was just last year.
And I have yet to watch that.
Yeah. And I've seen bits and pieces of it, particularly the Mechagodzilla part. So at 4 o'clock in Ballroom 1, another Godzilla's Revenge panel, 2 of them.
It doesn't deserve it.
A look at the making of Honda's most misunderstood entry in the Godzilla series. And this is what Kent's thing was coming from earlier in the episode. And critical examination of the film with Ed Gaszewski and Steve Reifel.
I'm trying to
care,
think.
Care to explain or extend your thing from earlier?
Do you have anything to say about it?
I don't even know how much they can go on this one since they're already doing a 50th anniversary panel. Because I don't know if there's going to be some things that have already been talked about for the previous panel for the 50th Godzilla's Revenge anniversary. But I don't know. It might be somewhat interesting in a way, but it would depend on how much it would be similar to the earlier.
I would like to go to that panel. Again, I'll have to take a look at all the other panels that are starting at 4 o'clock. Oh, that is the first one that they have listed here at 4 o'clock. And looking at what else is available, yeah, I'll go to that one actually. No offense to anybody else.
Yeah, because apparently these are the last 3 panels.
But for Saturday. Again, and I know you don't have the book, but David Kallett again. Going back to David Kallett. And I could be wrong, but like I said, to my understanding, he's really the first person with any sort of credibility behind him that really sort of came out publicly and has really not just defended the film, but has come out and even said, yes, this movie is misunderstood. You guys who are bashing the film and simply dismissing it as, what's the term, with stock footage garbage, you don't understand like really everything else. Yes, there's stock footage in the film, but when you really look at it, this young boy Ichiro is, as the term David Kallett uses, a latchkey kid. You know, his parents are really never home, and you know how scary it is that kidnappers are coming to get him, even though the kidnappers are a bunch of buffoons, and the like. Now, I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast or not, so I'm just going to talk about it here for a moment, so please indulge me. After reading that particular entry in David Kallett's book about Godzilla's Revenge, here, gosh, 3-4 years ago now, did that change my view of Godzilla's Revenge, and have I looked at it differently since then? It did make me, yes, appreciate Godzilla's Revenge a little bit more. However, I will say I was never one of the people that, you know, was always saying, you know, Godzilla's Revenge is one of the worst. Did I look at it as one of the weaker entries in the franchise? Yes, I looked at it as one of the weaker entries, but I never thought it was the worst. Part of the reason why I think I never looked at it as being one of the worst was because Revenge was one of the first handfuls of Godzilla films we ever saw. Because let's see, we watched in order Sea Monster, Megalon,
King of the Monsters.
King of the Monsters, and after that it gets fuzzy. But I don't know what order it comes after that, but I know King Kong vs. Godzilla came along.
I think that might have been the fourth one.
Eventually, Mothra vs. Godzilla came along, as well as Monster Zero. We rented those. And then there was Raids again, Rodan, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and this film. And I don't remember what order all of those were, but those were kind of like the first handful, like the first 10 to dozen films of kaiju films we ever saw. And as a kid, even growing up, like Godzilla's Revenge, before I understood anything about stock footage, the funny thing is, though, we knew there was something interesting about it because Sea Monster was the first Godzilla film we saw, and there was Sea Monster footage in that film. So we knew something was up. And the fact, too, that in the Godzilla scenes, all of it, his appearance changed majorly. So we were
constantly.
So we knew something was up, but we didn't understand the term or know the term stock footage at the time. So there was that. But I never looked at that film as being like the worst or what have you. I looked at it, yes, as a weaker entry as I got older. Growing up, when I first became a Godzilla fan, from 92 up to about 90, I want to say between 97, 98, 99, somewhere in there, I looked at it as a halfway decent film. Because I remember one spring when I was in middle school, I got sick. I was sick for about a week. And one of the things I did just to pass time while I was sick during that 1 week was I watched Godzilla's Revenge twice in 2 days. I watched the film twice in 2 days. Godzilla's Revenge. For some people out there, they're going to be like, were you on your deathbed? Like, were you delusional? Like, what was going on with you? No, I just was sick, and I remember lying there. I'm like, I want to watch a Godzilla movie. Godzilla's Revenge just kind of popped in my mind. I said, okay, I'll watch that. I watched it. I loved it, and the next day I watched it again. Yeah, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But have I looked at it differently, knowing what David Khaled has said? A little bit, but not too much. It hasn't been earth-shattering for me. And I think part of it was because I always kind of knew the subtext of what was being told in that story. Not to the degree that he describes it in his book, but I just knew there was something more different about the film than what people gave credit for. Yeah, like, for some people it definitely was groundbreaking, but for me, not too much. I'm happy that it's getting more respect because I don't think the movie has deserved the hate that it's gotten. A movie that should be hated is Shin Godzilla, but for many reasons. But I'm really happy to see that Godzilla's Revenge is getting its just desserts. But can we stop this talk now, though? After this year, I don't want to hear any more talk about how Godzilla's Revenge has been misunderstood, because this discussion has already been going on for like 5-6 years at least already, and it just needs to stop. This discussion has been going on long enough to where people are like, well, it's not the worst Godzilla. It's like, we get it. Most people's opinions have changed anyways on this film. Not everybody's, and you never will change everybody's opinion, but it's like most people's opinion, yes, has changed over the last 5 or so years. So let's put this discussion to bed.
And let's move on here. Also at 4 o'clock in the ballroom 2 is the Kaiju music videos. Basically fan-made tune and Kaiju combos, showing some maybe pictures, videos, and all that with probably, says it right there, with Andy Steele. And also at 4 o'clock in the Kennedy Room, the Art of Kaiju Writing. One
of the more popular ongoing panels that happens really every year, at least since we've been going to GFEST.
So join Skip Peel, Neil Rybe, John LeMay, and Nathan Marquand for discussion on writing about Kaiju. We'll cover all aspects of fiction and nonfiction writing. If you have questions, ask them. We're here for you.
That's always, I got in on the tail end of one of those panels over the last 2 or 3 years.
I think I might have came in after one of the panels.
It's interesting. If you are someone who loves to write or, intends on writing, and especially about Kaiju, of course, that's always a fun panel to go to. It's really fun and unique. I've never written about Kaiju and I love to write, but it's always fun to listen to what these guys have to say.
And that's essentially it of all the panels for Saturday, because then there's a 3-hour break until 7 o'clock for ballrooms 1 and 2 as they are combined for the Jeopardy Championship,
which you will be a part of.
I probably won't. Probably not go that far if I did. And then at 8 o'clock is the adult costume parade. And at 9 o'clock is the amateur Kaiju videos. And all these are in ballrooms 1 and 2. And then basically to round off the night for day 2 is the showing of Monster Zero.
That'll get me to the Pickwick.
At 10:30 at Pickwick Theater.
Anybody who's listened to the podcast again long enough knows that's one, if not my favorite Godzilla films.
And so
Sunday, my turn now.
With the final day of GFEST,
the final day of GFEST, Women of Kaiju Fandom. It seems like it's a sequel to something that was done last year about women within, I think, the Kaiju films. I think that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think this is Matt Frank's wife.
That is his wife, yes.
Yeah.
Bringing together ladies who love the genre and thrive in the fandom. The women, and by the way, that one last year was packed. It was in one of the ballrooms.
Yeah, it was pretty good size.
The women discuss navigating the various franchises, future hopes for fandom, but most importantly, their favorite kaiju and what drives them into this amazing world of monsters. Okay. And then at 10 o'clock is interview number 2 with Shusuke Kaneko. At 10 o'clock as well, How to Draw Godzilla with, again, I'm sorry, Philo Barnhart and Matt Frank. I know how to say Matt Frank.
It says it right there.
Oh, it does say right there. He's part of the Hanna-Barbera. We just didn't scroll down enough. At 11 o'clock, Kaiju video game history up from the depths. Join game developer Alex Rushdie as he shines a light on the history of Kaiju video games, highlighting developers and games that you may not have played or even heard of. Most of them probably Japanese related. Or Colossal Kaiju Combat, which went defunct. At 11 o'clock as well, toy and model photography. Monster photographers gather around. It's time to share some simple tricks to make your Kaiju toys and model kits seem gigantic. Stan Hyde and David Dobko will share some amazing images. We'll discuss how you can photograph your own monsters to recreate images from the movies or to create images from movies that never were. We'll also share some places online that you can visit to share your work and see some amazing monster photographs. Also at 11 o'clock, this might be the one that I'll go to during that time frame. 25 years of Space Godzilla. I remember you buying that Fangoria that had was talking about.
Well, it had Godzilla on the front cover.
It had Godzilla on the front cover, but it was about Space Godzilla.
Yeah, I remember that was like a huge, I think the main huge piece of that entire issue of Fangoria.
And again, this is in Kennedy. They've had several of these anniversary deals over the last couple of years in Kennedy. They need to move these. Someone, please, who's ever in charge of putting panels in particular rooms at the Crown Plaza, put these anniversary panels in one of the ballrooms because these are always popular. Well, why should I listen to you, Kent? I don't know, because I go to GFEST. It's been 25 years since Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla hit theaters to celebrate Godzilla's 40th birthday. Featuring a new adversary for Godzilla and Space Godzilla, the film also introduced a new version of Mogura to modern audiences, not to mention a monster that was reportedly Koichi Kawakida's favorite creation. Come revisit this unusual entry in the Heisei series with Colin McMahon, Ira Taborn, Andrew Battaglia, and Jeff Horn. At noon, it's the award ceremony for contest winners. Boo. I mean, no, I'm just joking. Also at noon is Kong Unmade, the lost films of Skull Island. Like Godzilla and Gamera, King Kong was the star of many of an unmade movie. You might already know he was supposed to star in what became Godzilla vs. Sea Monster, but what about Kong's other missed opportunities? From the mind of Marion C. Cooper came a bevy of unproduced concepts like Tarzan vs. King Kong, a planned 1934 color prequel set on Skull Island. Odder still, Cooper even wanted to remake King Kong but set the story on another planet in outer space. Learn about more unmade films starring Kong from both America and Japan with John LeMay. That'll be interesting. At noon, in Alien Invasions in the Godzilla movies, it's a 2-for-1 podcast panel about the influences of American and Japanese movies about alien invasions. Brian Shershell of Kaiju Vision Radio and Taylor Hensley of Giant Monster Messages explain the historical and cultural influences on these popular stories, including the similarities and differences between the Japanese and American movies. At 1 o'clock, The Power of Ifukube, a piano concert with Riko Yamada. Riko Yamada is an internationally acclaimed pianist and former student of Akira Ifukube. Pianist Patrick Godin joins her in performance of some of Ifukube's most famous kaiju and tokusatsu scores. Also at 1 o'clock, Latitude Zero, a behind-the-scenes look at one of the most ambitious and tumultuous co-productions between Toho and overseas investors with Ed Gajewski and Steve Reifel. The last time I saw this movie was when we discussed it on our podcast.
Yeah, that was my last time.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a long movie, but what makes it long outside of just its length is because it is really kind of a dull film.
Particularly that submarine scene. I think the chase scene or something like that.
Yeah. It's like the chase scene in The H-Man.
Yeah.
At 1 o'clock, Godzilla stories. Like the campfire rounds of old, we still sit together while Stephen Schilling helps us all share our stories of how we discovered Godzilla and how Godzilla has affected our lives. It can be funny, touching, and sometimes just ridiculous. It's a personal story session, less fan fiction, and more about what Godzilla means to us personally. People have shared poetry inspired by Godzilla and stories, how Godzilla has literally saved their lives. Come to share, just to listen. I think this has been somewhat of an ongoing panel in recent years. Like it's just sort of a continuation, I think, of what's been going on in recent years. At 2 o'clock, another Ifukube panel. Akira Ifukube, the man, the music, the monsters. Eric Hominick and his panel will discuss Akira Ifukube's life and career as one of Japan's foremost composers. Several of the maestro's film scores, such as Godzilla 54 and Rodan 56, will be closely analyzed, with Eric Hominick, John DeSantis, Riko Yamada, Patrick Galvin, Tyler Martin.
I want to speak up just a little bit more.
At 2 o'clock, it's Collect All Monsters. Only Kaiju Vinyl is Real. Collect All Monsters is a new YouTube channel all about kaiju toys. Join the cast of the show and discover the wonder of Japanese kaiju vinyl with Leslie Chambers, Christine Chapin, David Eric Dopko, John Ruffin, and Kyle Yount. Also at 2 o'clock, Creating Original Kaiju. In a genre ruled by a giant fire-breathing lizard, where do new kaiju come from? Join Realm of Goryo's Dainji Kroll and members of Kaiju Assault to learn about how they create new monsters for stories and games and find inspiration for your own work. At 3 o'clock, G-Fan, G-Fest, and G-Tour. Any fans curious about the history, inner workings of, or future plans for the 3 Gs can ask questions and make suggestions with J.D. Lees. 3 o'clock, Godzilla YouTubers. Catch up on the YouTube scene with Titan Goji, Kaiju Noir, Monstrosities, Tokusatsu Vlog, T-Man 1954, and Dangerville, as they all share their experiences as contest creators in the Godzilla community.
Yeah, because those last two D-Man 1954, Dangerfield. I'm very familiar.
I'm familiar
those.
with Dangerville. I can't say the same about any of the others. I've
Yeah.
heard it. Well, actually, no. I'm familiar with Kaiju Noir. I take that back. At 3:00, I would love to go to this panel, but I'm afraid of what's going to be said.
No, I think a majority from I heard that a lot of people like the Godzilla.
Where have you been? I'd like to go there because everywhere I've gone, people have hated the anime trilogy.
Oh, the anime trilogy. For some reason, I was talking about the anime one.
right. Yeah, people hate it. At 3:00, the Godzilla anime trilogy. Playing in Monster City on the Edge of Battle and the Planet Eater. Basically, a panel about the discussion of the whole anime trilogy. At 4:00, I think this is the absolute final thing. Yes, it is. Kaiju Confessions. Time to. Stan Hyde isn't doing his one thing. He usually does a thing where it's like fun music videos and singing. And all
Well, I
that.
think they usually don't. No, that's the Titanosaurus thing. I think they don't usually list that.
They have
on
listed
there.
it in the past, though.
I don't know. We'll have to
Is
find
he not
out.
doing it anymore?
We'll have to find out.
It's time to pack up GFEST for another year. Join the celebration of Kaiju song and dance. Oh, there it is. That's what it is. What's a monster movie without a catchy tune? Now it's time to participate in the fun. Join us. Let's save the earth with Stan Hyde. I went to one of those 2 years ago. Stan does a wonderful job, and I don't mean to poo-poo it, but it wasn't for me. Yeah, it just wasn't for me. I think if you love that stuff, hey, that's great. I'm just saying it wasn't for me. I would say if you're going to be around for Sunday and about that time, check it out. It might be for you, but for me, it wasn't.
And I know we were asked a question about the dealer's room, and I know you answered that for one of the followers on our Facebook page about when the dealer's room opens at the time. But I did recently see something on here. If I could find it here, I'm guessing, yeah, yeah, here it is. To accommodate demand, this year's GFEST dealer's room opens at 10 a.m. all 3 days, even on Friday. No wristband will be needed for entry. Back to basics. JD.
So they took, 2 years with wristbands?
I think a few years.
It would be no more than 3 if they did. Boy. I liked how they did it last year, though. But I could understand why some people would hate it. Especially people who, showed up late.
But I think it had to deal with a lot of the lines that they
Well,
created.
the thing was because the...
and then also the fire marshal.
The fire marshal
code
will only allow certain people in. But the thing was, if you had a number that was one of the earlier numbers, you could go back in as many times as you wanted. But the problem with that, though, was because, again, the fire marshal would only let so many people in at a time.
Mm-hmm.
People who had larger numbers continued to wait, while people who got in early could still keep going back and forth if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I could understand why, people would have issue with that. I don't know how you fix something like that. On Saturday night, the Kaiju Crescendo concert will be happening at the North Shore Performing Arts Center at 9 p.m. in Skokie. That's good to know. That is good to know, yeah, because it didn't say it there on the summary. Kaiju Crescendo. I wondered about that because I'm like, oh, they're actually going to have music there in the ballroom. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of weird because wouldn't that interrupt? And it's like, no, this actually makes sense here.
Yeah, I wonder, let's see here, North Shore Performing Arts Center. Let's take a look at Google Maps, see how far away that is.
It shouldn't be that far.
Let's see, go back.
Just check Skokie. Just check Skokie.
North Shore Performing Arts Center. Nope, I'm going to do this.
I'm going to do it the hard way.
Performing of the arts. There we are. So be right there.
I need my eyeglasses.
And back up. Yeah, it's sort of near Evanston,
Where's-
where Northwestern University is. And there we are right there.
That's not too bad though. That's I don't know how many miles. If I just had to take a really rough guess, that's 8-10 miles. That would be my guess.
Let's see here. Let's take a go to directions and maybe was it? Oh, that's zero. Crown Plaza, Chicago, O'Hare. And yeah, 26 minutes.
13 miles.
26 to 30 minutes.
Depending on what route you took.
Yeah.
13 miles. It's not terrible.
Also, would like to know how that parking would tail. We can.
Where's Pickwick again?
Pickwick. It's right along the. What's it? Right there.
Oh,
And then there's us right there.
too far.
Yeah.
That's closer than Skokie.
It's.
I was hoping it was.
I would say
walking
about
distance.
Yeah, I would say about close to like in the middle, about halfway point between us and the performing arts. I'm surprised that they didn't have it at the Rosemont Theater, because apparently there's not going to be anything happening there during this entire week, because they were having having something there originally, but then it got canceled some time ago. So, oh well. But yeah,
That's it as far as discussion. I mean, so Jason, like, what? Just kind of judging from what we're seeing here with panels, what is your thought as far as what maybe to expect this year, or what you think?
So far it sounds pretty decent. I would say it'd be at least maybe one of those GFests that would be on our list that we've been doing every year as far as ranking from best to worst. I would say it'd be in the upper half. I wouldn't know where, but once we do the post show and then digesting the after after GFest 26, I probably would have a better picture of it. But so far, after taking a look at the list for this year's GFest, it sounds to be more in the upper portion of being one of the better GFests.
Yeah, I mean, upon first glance for me, I immediately, once I got done scanning it here odd number of days ago, I immediately thought to myself, middle, upper half middle, for me personally. But yeah, it definitely has the potential for that. The only thing that sort of, not on a major level, but sort of concerns me is that in previous years, not every year, but in previous years with some of the, what I would consider the better GFests, one of the things that made some of those GFests great was not just the people, but the number of what I would personally consider good to great panels. And a lot of those would always be crammed. I would be going from one panel to the next, really no break. I would have to like force myself to eat lunch, because otherwise I was always going to panels and missing, lunch and all that. This year there are some schedule conflicts, but not that many from what I saw. That concerns me a little bit. because just until we get there and actually have the schedule and we start circling things and we can kind of see things more in a layout that will, how it will affect us in real time, I'm not going to really be able to say officially one way or the other. But it seems to me like there could sadly be some dead time in there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but
Yeah.
it seems like to me there could even be moments where there's too much.
It would just depend on the amount of energy that we would have, if there's anything that would be interesting during that time. And then, of course, whatever's on the GFEST channel on some of those times as well. So a lot of it just depends on the days of GFEST mainly.
Well, yeah, and it's going to be interesting. It really is. I mean, like, there are some definitely good panels on there, and like I said, there's going to be some periods where it's going to be tough to figure out which panel to go to because of scheduling conflicts. And yeah, it's just again, we won't really know until we get there and can kind of see for sure how it's going to play out. But
Right.
Just looking off of the schedule here, it just sort of, it seems to me, yeah, like this has the potential to sort of be kind of in the middle, which isn't bad, but kind of in that upper half. I definitely do not believe for one moment, and I don't think this will ever happen, but I don't think anything's going to replace 19 or 20 as my personal favorites, because those were the first two we went to. I mean, there's novelty there. Will it replace 22, 23?
It depends.
It's got a tall order. Is it possible? Yes, but I would say there's an uphill battle there. Does it have the potential to be one of the worst? Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I was shocked last year with it being the 25th anniversary of GFEST that it just didn't seem like there was as much brouhaha from a panel
or
standpoint.
like an actual, or maybe possibly an actual celebration of
Yeah,
the entire
because-
convention. Because I thought it was going to be that way, but then it seemed when we went into it and it actually happened.
And see,
it
25
quite feel
years
like it.
in a marriage is considered the silver anniversary. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
But in GFEST 20, our second GFEST that we went to, they made a big deal about it. There was cake even.
Yeah.
They had cake. The hotel made cake. And, people, got a slice of it. Like, it was a big deal. But 25th anniversary, I remember you and I discussed it last year. We were like, they just kind of were like, yeah, 25 years, hooray. And that was it.
Yeah.
And they had a GFEST room where they had videos displaying clips from previous GFEST, including old posters, T-shirts, stuff like that, old memorabilia. But still, it was just kind of hush hush. They didn't do much with it.
It was mainly a meh sort of thing.
And it's so weird because, again, that's the silver anniversary. 20
think
years,
it'd be-
yes, that's a big deal. But
you think it would be a little bit more important.
But they made a bigger deal out of the 20th anniversary than they did the 25, which, again, I mean, 20 years, yes, is a big deal. But 25th, again, like I said, silver anniversary. That is kind of the bigger deal.
Because you're there longer than the 20 years.
It's so weird. Because that was my biggest disappointment from last year, was that you and I went in anticipating something bigger and grander. And the fact, too, that was also the 50th anniversary of Destroy All Monsters as well. We just thought, GFEST and Destroy All Monsters are going to take center stage, and they really
blew it.
They really didn't. And it was just it was a weird GFEST last year.
Yeah. To me, they sort of didn't take advantage, or just sort of blew it.
I mean, they kind of did. I still am, 1 year later, I'm kind of shocked at how they handled that. Because I know if it were us, if we were the ones who created GFEST, and I'm not saying they did a horrible job, I just find it strange that they more or less kept it hush hush or kind of on the down low. And that more, I mean, Destroy All Monsters is a huge fan favorite here in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought at the very least they were going to make a big deal at least out of Destroy All Monsters. They really didn't. There were 2 or 3 panels, maybe, at least 2, that I can remember off the top of my head that dealt with Destroy All Monsters. But even then, like, they didn't do that big of a deal with it, even in their own personal merchandising for GFEST last year. It was odd. It was just odd.
Yeah, even though we always say that GFEST 21 being the weakest one out of the ones that we've gone to so far, I would say 25 for me would be one of the oddest.
25 was weird. It just was. I mean, it's weird because not only did it go by quickly, which is no one's fault, but it went by in a flash.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like that, it was done. It came and went like that. But it was weird, and it was weird from a head scratching standpoint. And like, you're thinking, why weren't they planning to do things a little bit differently? And they didn't do it,
or make it more of a big deal.
Yeah,
it just way, which it should have been.
To this again, like I said, about a year later, no joke. I'm not joking when I say this. I, from time to time, think about, previous GFests, and over the last year, I've thought about last year's a few times, and I have always thought, why didn't they make a bigger deal out of not just the 25 years, but even Destroy All Monsters, because of the huge fan following that film has here.
And I know one of the things that Akira Takarada was originally supposed to be at the 25th GFest, and I think with that sudden surgery that he had before GFest took place, I think some of it possibly blew some air out of that.
I don't think so. I don't think, as great as he is, he wouldn't have been able to say that. Because still, the whole thing as a whole was still weird. By the way, remember that one guy who played as one of the Ghidorah heads was saying last year on a recorded video, he was going to be here this year?
Yeah.
Didn't I tell you? I was sitting there next to you when we saw that video. I bent over and I said, I bet you he doesn't come next year. And yes, he's not coming.
Yeah.
I called it. I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast, but I told it to Jason because they had a recorded video.
I think you mentioned before that you're thinking that he's probably won't be coming for next year.
I remember those sitting when they showed that video. Oh yeah, I play like whatever head of Ghidorah he plays in the new King of the Monsters.
And then he also played as George in Rampage.
Yeah, and he was like, yeah, I can't wait to meet you guys next year. And I bent over to you and I go, I bet he doesn't come. And sure shooting, he canceled. He canceled here, between 4 and 6 months ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I called it because I told you. I leaned over. I said, I bet you he doesn't come, because I've seen that happen too many times, not just with GFEST, but in real life, people a year out who say they're going to come next year. And I'm like, that's too much time. Where so many things can happen, things will change. And sure shooting, for whatever reason, he's not coming. And I told you, I said, I bet you he doesn't come.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I hope, though, that this is a great GFest. Of course, we always hope that every GFest is going to be one of the most memorable. And unfortunately, at least for us on a personal standpoint, the last couple they've been a little bit of a downer. Or if they were great for you, that's awesome. But
like what you said, some of the novelty is starting to wear off.
Well, and that's right. I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it for us. Definitely novelty has been part of it. Wearing off, and that's nobody's fault. But
I think that's one of the things why
I mean, of course,
earlier,
it's definitely.
Like, I probably would go to these for at least a few more years, and at least after that, take a little bit of a hiatus, just take a breather, and just kind of build my excitement again. I'm
Even
not sure how
then,
long that's going to take.
The thing is, though, and I've thought about it too, it's like you could take 1 year off, you could take 5 or even 10 years off. Yes, I think to some extent, the more years you skip, the more exciting it could get when you do return.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not going to be your very first time, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to recreate magic, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you're wasting time. What you basically have to do is go in with the mindset of just really trying to take, and this is something we try to do, and we sort of both fail and succeed at the same time to some extent. You just have to try to take in every moment and just try to do your best to savor it as best as you can. And that's what was so, one of the things that was so weird about last year was because that seemed like it was the fastest GFEST ever.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
because I think we talked about that too.
Yeah.
One of the fastest.
And again, part of that was just because you get busy, you get caught up in things. But at the same time, though, too, again, like we've said here before, it was a weird GFEST last year. I remember having a lot of downtime than I've ever had before in a previous GFEST. That was a big part of it too. Just odd last year was on so many levels, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping 26 really fixes some of the issues. It's too bad because like I said, 24 wasn't all that spectacular. 25 was meh. I'm really hoping we get back to something that we would consider to be good, if not very good. Hopefully, more than anything else, great. But we won't know till we get there. Do I think it's going to be great? Judging from the schedule, I'm going to say no. But does it have an opportunity to be good? Yes. Mm-hmm. I think it has the potential to be good. And that's what I'm hoping for. And part of it is on us. We have to do the best that we can, to savor every moment that we can. But before we go, I just want to say that anybody who watches this before attending GFEST, we're going to be there again. We're going to be there all week. We're going to be there like late Monday morning.
That's the reason why I'm here in Kent's place.
We're going to leave the following Monday morning. So if you see us, say hi. Half the time, if not most of the time, we're going to be wearing Daikaiju ball caps and T-shirts. You've seen the ball cap on the podcast several times. If you've watched previous episodes,
worn
it a few times.
Yeah, we just got the T-shirts in a few days ago, and as well as we've updated our little business cards, like we've displayed.
I found some old ones in my bag.
Yeah, so and like I brought some too. Probably dispose of those, but for this year we've updated our cards with our new logo and updated some more of the information on the back, so we'll be putting those out once again this year. So
yeah, I mean, if you see us, say hi. I'm bringing my voice recorder this year. Part of that is because I think I am going to record some voice memos periodically over the course of the convention. That's part of it. One of the things I may try to do, as well as maybe do some brief interviews with random people at GFEST as well.
And we'll probably put those possibly on the audio exclusive podcast for iTunes and Google Play.
Potentially, yeah. So
because I know we can't really do it on YouTube.
And we've been more than happy to talk to you, even do a potential interview with you. It won't be an extensive interview. It would be a kind of a brief interview, but
yeah. So other than that, thank you for listening and watching the GFEST 26 pre-show on the Daikaiju Network podcast. If you haven't subscribed to us, even here on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button down below. And we're also on iTunes and Google Play, like I mentioned a minute ago. And you can subscribe to us on those two platforms. And you can also listen to our audio and watch some of our most recent and previous podcast episodes. We're on daikaijunetwork.com, both video and audio formats. And so I think we're pretty much all good with the comments there.
Thank you so much, Greg, for listening and participating and helping us with our lapses in knowledge.
So, is there really anything else do you want to add before we sign off?
I have to pee, so.
And plus, it's a little bit past your bedtime here.
Yeah, it's 10:30 Eastern time. So
Yeah, and I gotta clean up my thing of ice cream.
we got a lot we got to do here. So
Yeah. Plus, I gotta take down this wall. I don't know if
Jason's Berlin.
Yeah, if I want to show you this little
For sound purposes.
for this wall right here for the noise and
That
everything.
was all Jason. I had nothing to do with
Yep.
that.
Yep, that was certainly my idea. Although you were trying to think of a way to deal with
I
that.
wasn't going to go to that much work. Though. I was
So-
trying to use that large piece on the bottom, and it was too tall, and I just was like, just deal with it. And you're like, no, I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to build a fucking wall. It's like,
And-
you built a fucking wall.
And I almost succeeded. I think I'm not sure what other good pieces I would have in there left. I'm not sure if there are good bigger chunks left for it, but yeah. So other than that, yeah, thank you for listening
Thank
to
you.
us, and hopefully we'll see you all at GFEST. And if
Be
you,
there or be a loser.
yeah, whatever. All right, see you later, folks.